Hello guys, I'm Dodger, and in today's video, I'm going to be reviewing every equipment piece in the game. But first, let's see what Wargaming and the people in charge think about this topic.
But a lot of people build kits without targeting info, and even without Sixth Sense. I'm personally someone that runs without Sixth Sense, so I can use something else I want there. In most cases, I take off targeting info as well.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Because there's other skills. In that case, other equipment that I feel feels more valuable. Yeah. It does. That is what makes me want a fifth slot though, because I'm always like, do I take it off and pay the penalty? So that would be a case where if we had a fifth slot, then I probably would use targeting info, but it doesn't make the cut. It doesn't make the cut. It doesn't make the cut.
So currently, after the 6.0 update, we have 4 slots of equipment, and I say that's really in theory, because in actuality, there's really only 3. And that's because you should always have the 4th slot be the target enhancing equipment. And that is automatically added on, so you don't need to add it yourself. But that should always be for that final slot. And that's a piece that is, it's vital to have on really all your tanks except maybe artillery. Because it allows you to see through bushes, see the silhouettes of tanks, and so on. And here's a video to show you just how bad it is shooting tanks without the targeting info. And you can see it's basically like shooting tanks in Cold War while they aren't spotted, which is just unpleasant and not very fun. And so with that out of the way, let's go over the possible equipment slots, or the possible equipment we have for the other 3 slots. There is some equipment that is truly, completely, and utterly useless, and some that are useful in certain situations, and others that are a must-have for every tank. So in the same way that we did skills, we need to prioritize according to the tank in question. First up, we have Advanced Repair System, which is not very important since you should always be playing with a big repair kit. And I've heard some people say that they're only playing with a normal repair kit because it's expensive, but I would like to remind them that one game in Cold War with a premium tank, and you can easily afford like 50 big repair kits with a decent game. So cost shouldn't be an issue with that, which makes the Advanced Repair System not very useful. Next, we have Spaliner, which can be useful for some super heavies to counter artillery, but I'd say if that you're playing a super heavy and artillery is farming you, you're probably doing something wrong, and so that's why I wouldn't consider this equipment a real priority. Some use Spaliner on meme ramming setups, but not everyone knows that Spaliner only gives you defense against ramming, not helping you actually do damage. So that's something to keep in mind if you're using that. Next up, we have Optics, which is essentially a must-have for all lights, mediums, and even some heavies and TDs. It's pretty self-explanatory why. It's just always good to have more view range. Next is Advanced Concealment, which is probably one of the more broken equipment pieces at the moment, since after 6.0, it also works on the move, not just while you're stationary. So it's very, very useful for light tanks, TDs, and even some mediums. Ventilation was prioritized before 6.0, but nowadays it's not as effective since there are so many skills that can just do the job better, like Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, etc. I'd say that it can be used, but it's very situational. Usually, it most often sees play with autoloaders since you can't put on the advanced loader, which takes me to the next equipment piece, advanced loader, which is hands down, you have to have on every tank. Doesn't matter what the tank is. Gunling drive is pretty much useless on tiers 8, 9, and 10 since there is the stabilizer, which just does the same thing but much better. But gunling drive can be used in lower tiers where stabs are not available. And it can also be used on some high tier TDs that also don't have access to stabilizers, like the E4. Reinforced tank fuel is useless since if your tank gets set on fire a lot, you should have the commander skill for that and not use up an equipment slot. Gun stabilizer is incredibly useful because it gives you a 20% increase on accuracy, which is like a noticeably significant amount, even for tanks that already have decent dispersion values. So this should be an equipment on a lot of the tanks that you have. Advanced armor is there's a wide range of belief of whether it's useful or not. I'm of the opinion that it's not very useful, and so are many of the members in 1. Since it's the same as the commander skill, and it only gives you a 5% change for hit points. So if you take the mouse, for example, 5% of 3,000 is only 150 hit points, and you could just double up the equipment and the commander skill for 10%, which would be 300 hit points. But like if you really think about it, that's only roughly one more shot that you'll survive in a game, and sometimes not even that. Sometimes you're just down 300 hit points anyways. So you get very little out of that equipment. So I would recommend against using that, even for things like a super heavy. Traction system and powertrain, they're two similar equipments, but both can be useful in their respective situations. And it just depends on what tank you're thinking about using these on. And you should do this by checking the engine stats of the tank to decide whether you need more, top speed and turning, or whether you need a little bit of top speed and some additional horsepower. For example, I use traction system on the Object 260 because while it gets up to speed as quickly as you need, you can go faster and you can turn better with the traction system. And I use like powertrain on the Chieftain VZ55, who don't always get up to top speed right away. Ammo swap is pretty much useless apart from some specific situations like RDs and certain HE guns. You can use it like to great effect on the 4005 tank destroyer and the 183 to swap between the Hesh and the AP, and same on the Type 5 with the HE, heat, and AP. So it can be useful in certain situations. So now let's go over the standard equipment for each class. And remember, this is only a general guide to help you better understand how to equip your tanks. There are certain cases where deviation is warranted, but obviously for brevity purposes, I won't get into those. But for light tanks, it should usually be advanced concealment, advanced optics, and either advanced loader or gun stabilizer, just depending on how you feel about your tank and whatever you feel more comfortable with. For medium tanks, the standard equipment should probably be advanced loader, gun stabilizer, and advanced optics. In some cases, advanced concealment is a viable option, like in the CS63, but for the most part, this holds true. For heavy tanks, advanced loader, gun stabilizer, and either ventilation or optics, depending on how the gun behaves. If the aiming time is bad, you can use ventilation to help that. For TDs, advanced loader, advanced concealment, and optics or ventilation. Depending on how you play, like the E4, you can swap out camo net for gunlaying drive to help aim faster and certain other TDs, but for the most part, those are the equipment slots or the equipment pieces that you want to be using. For artillery, dirty artillery players, you can use advanced concealment, advanced loader, and ventilation if possible. You can't always equip it. And for artillery, you can switch out the target enhancing equipment for gunlaying drive, because you don't always really need to see the outlines, because you can just knock out someone for like 2,000 hit points, and you don't need the targeting indicator because artillery is overpowered. But that is probably the most effective setup for your artillery. And now to finish the video, here are some screenshots of the different equipment setups for certain tanks. And that's all from me. I hope you liked the video, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below.
I'm personally someone that runs without 6 cents, so I can use something else I want there.